Thanks again, Mario, and thank you all. Lee's really amazing. You know, he's modest, but he is obviously, he grew up in this industry, but he's a captain in the Army Reserves, a member of the JAG Corps, awesomely qualified guy to represent all of us in Albany. We should have more people like Lee up in Albany, so Lee, congratulations. I don't remember the first time I met Pete King, but it had to be from Rabbi Potasnik, who's a good friend of both of ours. You know, the Congressman gets awards all the time and gets honored at dinners like this all the time, but when I was trying to decide who we should honor as our Man of the Year, this was a very easy decision. Pete King stands for security and safety in New York State. He is the loudest voice, the most impressive voice, the most respected voice that speaks on behalf of our country, quite frankly, not just New York, about Homeland Security issues. And it is an honor that he accepted the Man of the Year award. So, Congressman, it's my honor to present you with the 2010 ALDONYS Man of the Year award.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Robert Zucker, for the introduction, and thank you for your friendship, and thank you for all you do for the sake of security, and again, for being such a good friend, and for selecting me for this honor, which does mean a great deal to me, and believe me, it was so soon after that you offered me, and I accepted, that poll number started to take off, and now I'm going to be chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, so if there's cause and effect, I got to give you the credit for it. Also join with you in congratulating Lee Zeldin on his phenomenal victory last week. This was really a tremendous victory for such a young person who has achieved so much in his short years, but to win the race and to take out an incumbent was just a great result. And it goes apart from just a partisan political victory, because again, Lee personifies what we want our elected officials to be. Again, a skilled attorney, a veteran of the Iraq War, a man who really knows what's going on, what has to be done, and will represent all of us in Albany with a tremendous amount of integrity. And I want to thank Lee, because he's on the eastern end of my district, for carrying me in that end of the district. I wouldn't have made it without you, Lee, so thank you very much. And I was going to say something about Rabbi Barry Dov Schwartz. What can I say? His invocation spoke for itself. I mean, that was. But again, it is great to see him here tonight, and certainly he's a legend in Rockville Center. I know he's chaplain in Nassau County, but it's always good to be here and have your rabbi. You know, it's so. But thank you, Rabbi. Thank you for your years of service. And I also want to make sure I stay your friend, because I would hate to be at a dinner and be on the wrong end of one of your invocations. In fact, I'll be seeing Bill Clinton next week. No. As Robert mentioned, as a result of last week's election, which, by the way, I'm not going to make this a partisan speech at all, but the change in Washington, the results in Washington, that was the largest election margin since 1948. The change of seats last Tuesday was greater than any congressional election in the last 62 years. And it's a great opportunity, but also it's a tremendous amount of responsibility, particularly in my case, because I will be the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee. I've discussed this with the Speaker-elect, John Boehner, and all that has been taken care of. So the elections are going to be in 2 or 3 weeks, but at that time, I've been told, and just the way the votes line up, that I will be chairman again of the Homeland Security Committee. And to be honest with you, having turf in Congress or having the perks has really never meant that much to me. And I'm not being modest in saying that. But to me, if there's any committee that I would do anything to be on, first of all, when the committee was first formed back in 2002, I moved heaven and earth just to get on the committee. And now, being chairman, I was chairman in 2005 and 2006, and I was a Republican ranking member for the last few years. To me, there is no more important committee in Congress, because there's no more important issue to our country than standing up and surviving against Islamic terrorism. And so many of you in this audience, I see Mike O'Neill here, Chief Ali, so many people who over the years have dedicated their lives to combating crime, to combating terrorism, to understanding firsthand the evil of jihad, which has attacked New York twice, which has attempted 11 other times and been stopped, which just time and again, day in and day out, is plotting to kill us and destroy us. Unfortunately, too many people in Washington, and certainly the further you get from New York, and the further you get from the Pentagon, and the further you get from September 11th, too many people who should know better don't know better. And they somehow put this in the back of their mind. Even the last election, to be honest with you, in both parties, you barely heard a word mentioned about terrorism. And yet, with all the talk of the economy, and that is absolutely vital, we must get our economy back on track, with all the talk of the budget, we have to get the deficit under control. The fact is, all of that would be pushed aside in a moment if there were another successful attack against the United States. And that's what I think too many people have chosen to forget. I remember being with President Bush in the White House on September 13th, 2001. That was Thursday, just 2 days after the attacks of September 11th. And he had a number of us there from the downstate New York area and from northern New Jersey, from the Congress, and he was basically bringing us up to date on what the status was, what was happening with the Russians, what was happening with the French and the British, and how he was going to coordinate the attack in Afghanistan. But then he went on to say that our responsibility as public officials and for people who are in the public eye was really, there were two main things we had to do. The first was to make sure that America went back to living its normal life as quickly as possible. We couldn't spend the rest of our lives walking around with our heads down, being afraid of being attacked, and we had to get out and get back to normal as quickly as possible. So we had to encourage people to do that. At the same time, we had to warn people and let people know that for every day of the rest of their lives we could be attacked. We have to constantly be on our guard. And he admitted this was somewhat of a schizophrenic message, or a mixed message. On the one hand, telling people to get out there, get it beyond you, get it behind you, and live a normal life. At the second, on the other hand, though, realize that the whole world changed on September 11th, and that we could be attacked at any moment, that our civilization and culture were under attack, and we had to somehow follow those two paths at the same time. And you know, when he said it to me, that seemed very logical and very normal. But then he said, I'm afraid we're going to be much too successful in the first part, getting people back to a normal life. And he said, the more they start leading a normal life, the quicker they're going to forget what happened. And I said, no, this will never happen. No one's ever going to forget what happened. Well, the reality is too many people have, including too many people in government, too many people in federal levels of law enforcement, quite frankly, have somehow put aside. They feel that if we somehow reach out the hand of friendship to our enemies, they'll reciprocate. That somehow once George Bush and Dick Cheney left office, the enemy would lose the incentive to attack us. That somehow if we went around the world and apologized enough for America, the enemy would realize we're really not so bad. Well, the fact is, and I'm the only member of Congress who's on both the Homeland Security Committee and the Intelligence Committee, so I get the perspective both from the outside in and the inside out. And I'm sure, as almost any of you in this audience, whether or not you get access to those briefings, just from your experience and your knowledge, you know that virtually every day of the week, 24/7, our enemy is plotting to destroy us. As I said, there's been 11 plots we know of against New York that have been stopped. But there's also plots in Minneapolis where you have young people actually being recruited from the mosques in Minneapolis and being sent over to Somalia to be trained as suicide bombers. We saw young men from New Jersey who were going to go to Somalia to fight and again work as jihadists. There's case after case. There's situation after situation where we have an enemy that's coming at us. And they've changed their tactics. It will be very difficult for them actually to launch a major attack against us from the outside like they did on September 11th. But again, they are changing. We saw what happened in Yemen, the new type of very, very sophisticated explosive that they were trying to send in. And we did get the intelligence break on that, and we moved quickly, and I give the administration credit for it. But again, I can tell you that the level of sophistication is really rising on this part of Al-Qaeda and Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. but also they're reaching out to recruit people in the United States, people who are under the radar screen, people who are living here legally, people who are citizens, people who are living here without any legal problem whatsoever. You had Zazi, who was going to attack the subway system in New York on September 11th of last year. Living in the country, went to high school in Queens, had a small business in Lower Manhattan, on nobody's radar screen. Yet, if he had not been stopped, that would have caused hundreds of deaths on the New York City subway system. And we only found out about him because of a electronic surveillance going on overseas where his name came up. He was not on anybody's radar screen until then. We had Shahzad at Times Square back in May, who came really, somehow the media tried to ridicule this as a guy who didn't know what he was doing. I can tell you that bomb came very close to working. There was one or two deficiencies, but that was 98% effective. And he went back and forth overseas, 18, 19 times to Pakistan for training, for meetings, for briefings. Again, under the radar screen. We went back and retraced every step of what he took over the years, and there's nothing he did that we, or our government, missed. He was questioned at the airport, he had all the right answers, he knew what to say, he knew how to say it, didn't disclose anything at all, and yet he was able to come over here, get the money, get the explosives, put a bomb together, and drive it right to Times Square at the exact time that he wanted to be there, because he had checked it out as to when you'd have the largest crowd on a weekend, where he knew he could leave the car where he did. And again, on that one we got lucky. So their new tactic is to get people from within, people we're not looking for, and have them carry out a quick type attack, which you saw was being planned in Europe last month, which again was a very, very real series of threats. It's what happened in Mumbai, India, when they attacked the train stations, they attacked the hotels, and again, it was not massive weapons, it was automatic weapons, grenades, and they just moved quickly. And so again, these are all things we have to be on our guard for. And one thing, I'm not saying that because I'm here tonight, but when about a month ago, when it seemed very likely that Republicans would win the Congress and I would have a chance to become chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, I started sitting down with people in Washington and some professional intelligence people in Washington, talking about gaps that we have and how can we resolve them, especially since, or at least try to resolve them, especially since we have some serious budget problems in the country. And a number of people spontaneously mentioned to me how we have to make better use of the private security industry. And they specifically mentioned Mumbai, India as being an example, where no matter how good the police are, unless they had the intelligence before to stop that type of attack, you have to have an effective private security force, totally coordinated with the police, with the FBI, with the counterterrorism forces. And so I'm telling you tonight that sometime in the next several months, as I start working my way through being chairman of the committee and getting things on their track, is to find ways and have hearings as to how we can make better use of the private security industry and effectively coordinate your industry with law enforcement at various levels. And this really would apply in not just here, but also in other parts of the country, where I think it's even more needed, because there's virtually no cooperation at all, where the police have not reached out or not working in any way with the private sector. And so these are just some of the issues that do face us. And also, I know that Senator Lieberman is an advocate for you. There's probably nobody in the House or the Senate that I work more closely with than with Senator Joe Lieberman. We've already had conversations this week, and he is chairman of the Senate Homeland Security, and so he and I will be working extremely closely together. And I can assure you that issues that are important to your industry will be discussed with Joe Lieberman and myself. This award tonight, again, it means a great deal, especially tonight, meeting so many people from law enforcement at the city level, Nassau County level, TSA, federal level, seeing all the retired NYPD guys we had tonight. My father was in the NYPD for over 30 years. I learned a lot from my father. Probably the main thing I learned was there's nothing cops dislike more than a politician giving a long speech. I remember he'd come home from the Holy Name Society communion breakfast, he'd come home from a graduation ceremony, whatever it was, and I wouldn't want to tell you the things he said about the politicians who gave the speeches. So somehow I see my father looking down on me now and say, "Hey, you're lucky you are where you are. Don't push it. Just shut up and sit down." But he had a very kind way of putting it. In fact, he was actually head of physical training at the police academy, and I've run into any number of retired cops who I think like him a lot more now than they did when they were running around the gym, and he was actually tormenting and torturing them. But in any event, I'm going to wrap up what I'm saying, but Robert asked if I'd be willing to try to answer any questions anyone may have. So why don't I wrap up what I'm saying? Thank you for the award very much, and if any of you do have any questions that you might want to ask, I'll be happy to try to answer them. And for those I can't, that's why Lee Zeldin is here tonight, to take the hit and find out what happens when the guy who has the seniority passes the blame on to the junior guys. So anyway, thank you all very much.
So we'll take one or two quick questions if they're out there. Otherwise, the congressman is so accessible, it's scary. So, does anyone have a question that they want to ask the congressman?
Robert, I just want to say,
Sure.
The industry is concerned with a number of bills, but there's a federal protective service bill, and we like the one that Senator Regan has proposed, as opposed to Sheila Jackson and come back from Mississippi. So the House version is a tough one. The one that Senator Regan has is a bill that's pretty well crafted. So whatever that's worth.
For what that's worth, and we'll get you that, because if he likes it, we like it. So that's good.
I'll be sitting down with Senator Lieberman in the next few weeks. Again, a very good relationship.
Right. We have Maureen.
Yes, Congressman, what do you think, practically speaking, the government can do about the increased threat on the cargo issue? Items coming into the country from other areas, et cetera, where they will target. It seems to be an enormous effort to cover all the bases.
Yeah, it is. There's two parts to it. One is cargo and the passenger flights. The other is cargo and cargo flights. We have to reach 100% security when it comes to cargo and passenger flights. We are probably more than 95% there on domestic flights here in this country. I would say flights from Britain and France are probably at 100% right now, on cargo and passenger flights. Other parts of the country, not so good. I mean, other parts of the world, not so good. TSA is involved in this. By the way, let me just say that the new director of TSA, John Pistol, I believe is going to do a phenomenal job. I worked with him, and he was the FBI, and he is the briefest, and he is taking a very aggressive role in this. I've discussed this just in the last week with Secretary Napolitano and John Brennan, the President's Homeland Security Advisor, how we have to move forward on the whole issue of cargo. But cargo and passenger flights, we're much further advanced on. Now, there are certain countries, I think we have to start putting pressure on them who are not as cooperative as they should be, or security is more lax than it should be. But the real concern I have is cargo and cargo planes. Because I'll be honest, there's no way you can scan 100% of cargo. It's just impossible. It would bring world commerce to a halt if we did it. On the other hand, we have to do more than we're doing right now. And that is really the challenge. And this is not a Democrat or Republican issue. I emphasize that. Actually, I was talking, like a name drop, I was talking to the President on Wednesday, and I told him, for some reason he hadn't called me in 2 years, but anyway, he called me on Wednesday. And maybe you want travel tips in India, I don't know. No, actually, it was a very important conversation. But especially in my conversations with Secretary Napolitano and John Brennan, the President's Homeland Security Advisor, I emphasize we have to do more with cargo and cargo. And we have to make the private sector part of that to find out how far we can push them to do more. On the other hand, we don't want to close down commerce, otherwise the terrorists will have succeeded. On other issues like port security, we're much further along, but we're talking about billions and billions of tons of cargo every year. And also, as I said, it's almost impossible to do it anyway. And without going into details, the way Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula handled this, it went through several very intense security screenings before it was stopped. And even when it was spotted, the first analysis came back that the bomb was negative. The fact is it wasn't. It was extremely lethal. It was at least 4 or 5 times more powerful than the bomb that was used in Detroit on Christmas Day. So that shows how sophisticated our enemy is, which makes cargo screening that much more difficult, but also that much more necessary. Because even though there are no passengers on the flight, and there are obviously there's a flight crew, and we're trying to minimize human life, but even just having a giant cargo plane explode over a large city, I mean, just think of, you know, the devastation that could cause alone, also what it would do to world commerce. So this is something which, and I've been assured by the administration that we will be moving forward with our allies, with the private sector, and addressing this as again, it's a new front in the war against us.
Congressman, thank you again for your friendship, for being here tonight, and for accepting the 2010 ALDONYS Man of the Year Award.
Folks, dinner should be served shortly. It's scheduled to be served shortly. If the Daves could take their seats and